Yeah, dude, how you doing?
Okay, so hear me out. They got half-price chicken nuggies right now at the drive-thru, and I'm in line. So
Oh, that's not a big deal. Do you have a time frame?
maybe like 10-15 minutes.
10-15? All right, that works. We're just chilling outside waiting for you.
Everything okay with Riley?
Yeah, he's just running a little bit late right now.
All right.
All right, bro. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, I'll see you in a little bit.
All right, peace.
Dude, I can't wait for this day.
Getting everyone's perspective. We have bands, venue owners, promoters. We even have industry executives. This is going to be a really cool set of interviews, and I'm really curious to see what everyone says.
Hopefully doing these interviews, our voice collectively will make a big difference.
That's the whole point of this project. Welcome to Kill the Noise. The last few years have been a real awakening for many of us. We're just a small team of music enthusiasts trying to bring more awareness and better support to the industry where it's needed. This is Rylan. I met Rylan back in high school. He's been working with musicians for over 10 years. He doesn't exactly write or play an instrument, but he has been in the technical field making videos and media for musicians. He's the one behind the camera most of the time, and seeing him in front of the camera is truly like catching a sight of Bigfoot. This is Norm. Norm and I have known each other for over 25 years, performing alongside one another for most of our musical career. Norm is the bassist of local metalcore band Storm the Empire and has dedicated most of his life to the local scene. And I'm Rob. I've been a local musician for over 20 years, performing under many aliases with many bands. Currently, I am the rhythm guitar player and vocalist of Storm the Empire. Over the last 2 years, I've dedicated my life to understanding the industry, where it's headed, what our local scene lacks, and what our arts community needs. In this series, we dive into the Okanagan music scene from bands, promoters, venue owners, and industry executives' perspective, covering a wide range of topics that currently plague our music scene.
I remember when I hit the first note in tune with my buddy who had his guitar in the same key, and I was able to realize that I was playing in a key with him. I was hooked right from that first note. Like, I was like, this is what I want to do. The guitar is what I dig, and I started writing songs when I was 17 years old, so I've been at it ever since.
I started right out of high school, basically, and then, just tried to get into bands as soon as humanly possible, and met some fairly decent fellows, and that's how that started. When I first started, I used to watch Metallica's Binge and Purge consistently, because that was upper echelon for me. And they were great live, especially Binge and Purge. So before I ever played live, I'd watch a VHS tape of that over and over and over, and all that happened is the better I got at music, I found inspiration in a million other places. You find different bands, you find different things that make the hair stand up on your end. You can't shake. You ever hear those songs where it's as soon as you hear it, right like that, even just talking about it.
You get a whole different sense of energy when you're playing live, you know, like you get the crowd and the atmosphere of the room and the mics and the reverberation and all that kind of cool magic that happens, and you get to perform the songs in a new way, in a fresh way every time, and I just love playing live. Being self-sufficient is the ideal, like it's a lifestyle, right? So if I, don't get a ton of fans right off the get-go, it's just the doing of the music that is the fun part, basically. The part that I enjoy the most is actually just playing the music. So I think once people pick up on that, the fact that it's so enjoyable and I'm having so much fun and everyone's just digging it, then I think the rest will come afterwards.
My family used to go to New Orleans every year to Mardi Gras. And I was so inspired by the street performers. Like, they were magic. And they just, one minute they were there and one minute they were not there and they were somewhere else. And they'd go, and we see them around the block or over there. And it was like, and they were just doing their thing, and it was fun and entertaining. And for a moment, people would stop and be like, whoa, what's that? Like, check out what that person's doing. And it was like, we all had this collective experience watching this one person do something. And all of our attentions collectively were in this one area. And that was really powerful for me to be a kid and just, because I watched the performer, that was really fun, but I also watched like the faces of the people that were watching. And that was something else. Like, that was from a real little kid, I remember. It was really amazing. My parents have always been patrons of the arts, so we always had theater tickets, and it was just as amazing to be so close and watching these professional, international professional artists do their craft on stage. These guys on the street doing their thing, and it was just so wild to go from one to the other. And that, for me, that there was so much space for everything in between, made me feel like I could at some point carve out my own little space in the world. I thought I was gonna write jingles.
Basically, like, started off with Slayer, Black Sabbath, then I saw Slipknot and I was like, wow, like, you can do this? That's crazy. And so I just went in a Slipknot spiral. And then next thing you know, I see on Castnet, Origin, big death metal band, is coming to play Armstrong. And I'm like, what? Like, we need to go to this. So I went. I was a little nervous because it was my first time being at like a more like local show. Everybody was nice. I made so many new friends and like the greatest people I've ever met, and saw some amazing bands. And ever since then, it's just been like my passion, you know? And I've made so many new friends and been to so many shows, and it's just great. I want people to be able to like experience the stuff that I'm experiencing.
Currently, I would say the music scene in Penticton is very underrated. I think there's a lot of great local talent, and when I go to these shows, I see a very small community at the shows, but there's so many people in Penticton who are sleeping on these great local bands, and I feel like a lot of the local Penticton scene is about those out-of-town bands and about those cover groups, and the local original talent is just getting overlooked, and I would love to see more of those small town shows being better attended by new faces, because there's a lot of people in Penticton, but it's a very small community that's supporting the local scene.
And kind of like Chris was saying about these out-of-town bands, a lot of times they tend to be cover bands. And you know, like, we got lots of breweries, wineries, and those sorts of establishments here in Penticton. They typically kind of look for like those acoustic cover bands. They just want background music. So, you know, a band like us, when it's like that in-your-face kind of energy, it's not so much of that around right now.
So it's difficult when we live in such an old, demographic in Penticton. What's about 50 plus is like the average age. Is that, the music scene, they want to kind of hear what they're used to, and that's the that's the Leonard Skinner, and that's the the Billy Joel, and the the music that's not quite rock and roll, and that's what they come out to support. So when they see this new punk band named the Flannel Contract, they might not be as in tune, because it's not their friendly cover band that they're used to hearing.
Not a lot of stuff. There's actually a few Moon and Spritz going, and there's some other venues, but there's never really a very great scene, I found.
You're talking here in Kelowna.
In Kelowna.
Right. I, on the other hand, who has made it a point in my life to make sure I investigated every opportunity for live local music over the last 10, 15 years, I seen the wave, you know, there was trends, and then some of the locals started picking up on it, and we got in, Fernando started picking up, and then we got, you know, private, the Knights of Columbus Hall, and there seemed to be a vibe, and Randy came in with his stuff, and Braden, and they start doing this stuff. Took over for Christina Kilchrist, who was running some production stuff that all went awry early. Like, I seen some great shows, but it blew the scene up, and then it faded, and everybody got a bad taste in their mouth. Then Nightwave Productions came in, and Braden Farr came in, and they started pumping up Munyon's Post, and then I went over to Fernando's because there was a metal buddy over there that worked, and he was like, yeah, I'll open up, and it started to get a good vibe, and I was down supporting and seeing all great local stuff, and I thought, yeah. And then, you know, it sort of overkilled itself, and then AMF started, you know, bringing more, what's the word? Motivation. More bands were like eager to get their stuff
finally
tight.
Something more
and I was like this
than
old
just...
school guy going, wow, this is great, this is good research, because there was nothing here when we were kids. Like, we had to make our own shows, man.
Right?
We would go in and take over bars, take over the house band, right? So,
even the last 10 years or so here has not been the best, right?
Better than,
I mean, there's those spots here and there throughout the whole Okanagan.
I thought it was starting to get
I found
going.
there could be more. It needs
was
more. Because everybody loves metal.
You don't even go.
Like, come on. You give me some metal, I'll go
You
out.
get all your info from my experience.
Wow. I might live vicariously
Yeah, great show
through
tonight. He's
your-
like, I'm like, you lame ass.
Yeah,
Get up.
The music scene pre-COVID was as good as it could probably get, I think, in Kelowna. Bands were clamoring at the door to get into Fernando's. We had kind of our pick of the litter, and we got to really put in anyone that we wanted to, and everyone. I probably could have put 7 days of music in, but we tried to focus on Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, with the odd shows on a weekday, depending on traveling bands coming through town. But it was pretty awesome. Good feedback. There was always crowds. The streets were always busy, and everyone wanted it, which was nice, right? Because you could hand bands a nice fat wad of cash at the end of the night, and they were happy. We were happy. Sales were awesome. It was good. I think it was as good as it could have ever been for Kelowna.
Well, as far as the local scene goes, ever since I've been playing in it, it's been very inclusive. Everyone's all friends. There's very rarely ever any situation where people are not included or made to feel special. That's little kids, that's girlfriends, it's the whole thing all across the board. It's very communal in all the best ways.
Well, the local music scene in the Okanagan, I think, is quite vibrant. And we have a lot of venues that are available here that aren't really available in a lot of other areas, such as like the wineries, for example. And we have a lot of tourism. And this creates a market for bands to perform in. And I also think the Okanagan has an excellent community of musicians that support each other, as well as agencies such as like music managers, such as yourself, that help establish artists and build them up and help promote them and help them book their gigs and get CD sales, upload their stuff onto streaming platforms, and really help the artists grow. So yeah, I do think the Okanagan has a very excellent music scene.
When I was first performing, there was lots of music happening, lots of places. So there was lots of places that I could go and practice performing, if you will, venues that I could go and that were accepting of people who were just trying to work themselves out. Of course, in the last 4 years, there's been nothing, nothing much. Well, 4 years, that's not 2 years. It feels like it's been a million years, but in the last 2 years, there's been not too much happening around here for sure. But up until then, we were thriving as a music culture, I think in the Okanagan, and it was just getting much better every day.
Well, the current music scene is at a standstill. It is, I was thinking about it as like, as a season. It's like late winter, early spring. And nothing's melting yet. You can't hear any drips off the trees, right? But the birds are back. There's snow on the ground, but the birds are back. You can hear chirping. You know that things are gonna start turning green. You can feel it in your bones. But it's not green yet. The snow's still on the ground and those bears are still sleeping. You know that they're gonna be showing up, but it's gonna take a little bit of time. The current music scene, I don't think will come back to where it was at for, at the end of 2019, right? And everything that had been planned for 2020. I don't think it'll come back just like magically like that. What I think will happen is we're going to see specifically a crap ton of bands coming through. I know so with the festival, I book a lot of bands and I inquire on a lot of bands. And what I know is a lot of bands are busy. They're busy for the summer. And it's gonna be very much like like that Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns has so many illnesses and they're all trying to go through the door at the same time and they're stuck and it just takes one thing to break it all through. I feel like this summer, early summer and late summer is gonna be like that. All these bands are gonna be trying to come through all at the same time and people are gonna have no idea where to spend their time or money, right? The cynical side of me also says that who knows, the 25th wave could come through and, we're all shelter in placing for another year, right? Where is it? I'm hoping that it's going to be the best summer of our lives.
The scene was getting really, really great right before COVID. We built up a pretty good scene over the 5 years that we were running Munins, because when we started Munins and we moved back to Kelowna, there really wasn't much of a scene, like a couple odd shows here and there at Fernando's and Doc's and stuff, but nothing consistent. And then over the time that we were running Munins, we were doing shows like 3-4 times a week through like the spring and summer seasons, so.
Yeah, I think a big difference was that like when we were growing up, there was a lot of all ages venues, lots of church shows, stuff like that. And then when we left, like Fernando's and Doc's were really the only two places that were doing shows when we came back. So opening it up to allow all ages kind of expanded the scene and brought in a big draw.
Allowed you to do more frequent shows as well because there was a bigger pool of people to come out, so.
Being an underage, little tiny kid is definitely interesting in a metal scene full of big, tall, bearded guys, but I think it's amazing. I've definitely matured a lot as a person and I've made some awesome friends and great connections, and it's definitely the best life I could live.
It's grown quite a bit from where I've been as far as up-and-comer organizers, promoters and stuff. I've seen quite a few people drop off just with venues closing down quite a bit. I've noticed a decline in that aspect, but I've noticed a lot of people that are working behind the scenes during COVID and they've actually made plans to, start doing more outdoor events and stuff like that. So hopefully there's more venues, I'd say. So I'd say the decline recently, more of an increase now, hopefully once restrictions are lifted.
For that one, it's interesting because turnover in the scene is about 2 years. Most local bands will last about 2-3 years tops if they're doing okay. If you meet a band that's in their double digits, there's something either special going on there or, maybe they're making some money. I know some bands that keep it together for those 10 years. They just pop up for the special shows or whatever. So the 10 years in there, you're talking about 5 lifespans, within that ecosystem. But of course, 2010 is a very special time for me because I was, not a middle-aged man, still trying to make this happen. So I look through that period with the rose-colored glasses. I think what I enjoyed back then a lot is I grew up in a small town in Tofield, and then I moved to Penticton, which I mean isn't, you know, to me it felt like moving to the Mecca. Like I'd never been to an open mic, you know, and like, yeah, I remember they used to do the Hog's Breath in Penticton, and you know, I saw like Aaron Goodwin, like this amazing slide guitar player, and then, you know, Shane Koizan would drop by and do his stuff. And like going from like what we were doing, which was like playing in the garage after hockey games, you know, to coming to Penticton where you could like sleep out on the beach and like meet people from around the world and go to an open mic like, you know, we had in the Hog's Breath. Yeah, I was like, I'm never leaving. This is my home now. In smaller scenes, you can't do this cliquey thing. You can't, oh, we're post-hardcore and you're, you know, neo-death way. Like, no one cares in a small town. You convince a local pub to like let a couple bands play, and maybe you got like some old, you know, punk rockers and a singer-songwriter opening, and then maybe your buddy does a DJ set, and you know, you're not great garage band, you know, gets the opening slot, but it's like, it's amazing, you know, and the whole town comes out because there's something happening. And they might forget to take the sports off of the machine, like off the TVs and stuff, and it's just like, but for me, I just like, that's what I loved about my beginnings in the Okanagan, and that was around the time, is like, you just see, there was just like, genres didn't matter as much. You know, everyone got together because it was awesome. You can see it as clear as day. It's like there's you know, there's the metal people, the strict metal people, and there's like the folky brewery crowd, and it's really hard for a creator like me and a promoter like me who wants to put on variety shows where not every band sounds the same.
The decade of 2010, I would say it started off with a lot of hope, a lot of promise. There was a lot of innovation happening within the scene. It was transitioning from a lot of underground, and it was starting to infiltrate some of the more mainstream circuit in town, which was pretty cool because there was a time between 2013, 2015 where heavy metal managed to get into the nightclubs and basically grab the scenery by the ankles and shake it. And that was a fun time, and it had a lot of promise behind it, and the scene did really well for some time. And then it seemed to taper down 2016, and COVID pretty much just snuffed it out. But there was a lot that was in the works. AMF got a foothold in that decade, and they started to build a really good festival.
Things in Kelowna specifically were taking a bit of a decline. Less people were coming out to shows, and it was getting harder and harder to actually book venues. But when there were shows, though, like people seemed to still really want to come out, which is good, obviously. But
between 2010, 2020, the music scene in the Okanagan was pretty vibrant, I would say. We had way more venues than we have now. There's, I feel like, a more diverse listening audience. And yeah, just overall, I'd say it was a pretty strong scene, especially for such a town that's so far away from major cities. I actually grew up, after high school, I moved to Penticton and spent, I think it was 6 or 7 or 8 years there before coming to Kelowna. And Penticton had an amazing music scene at that time, which sadly seems to have completely died off. And one of the issues I had at that time was it was migrating to Kelowna, and a lot of my gigs and music opportunities and stuff were coming from Kelowna. So I ended up moving to Kelowna, and it seems like now I'm going to Vernon and Armstrong and Kamloops quite a bit. So over the years, it's obviously declined, but between 2010, 2020, it was extremely strong.
The experience was amazing. The music scene is such a sense of community, and as a venue owner, you really have to appreciate that. There's no comparison. It's the music scene has changed so much. The musicians are struggling. It's been a long journey.
There was 3 or 4 to 5 really good venues that music was played consistently. One of the best ones being Hellraiser. Hellraiser, basically, they brought in really heavy acts from all over the place and made sure that local bands got on the bill every single time. Some of the best shows I saw in Kelowna were at Hellraiser, where you'd have young kids playing with their heroes and trying their best not to look like red-faced little children.
Well, at the time, because I find everything is about timing, and the time was right for when we had our establishment. Like the Center for Arts and Technology had just fired up, so there was a lot of students that were doing projects and starting bands, and then there was also students that were learning how to be audio engineers, and they were going to do sound and learning that aspect of bands. And it was the very beginning of the millennium-ish. It was 2002, 2003, 2004. And Kelowna hadn't really transferred over into that realm yet. They were pretty mainstream. We were more catering to the alternative bands, the underground scene. So there was a whole gamut of people that were raring to go, raring to party, have a good time, and promote their creative endeavors, bands, electronic music. It was just the right time, the right group of people, the right age group, and I didn't have a problem with it at all. I found that because Kelowna is an outdoorsy kind of place, that in the summertime, people are into riding their bikes, going camping, being outdoors, so they were less likely to attend shows compared to the winter, compared to like an urban setting where there's less outdoor options. So I don't know, I thought in general it was great and everybody had a good time. Obviously it was much easier than since COVID because there's been no public interaction. I mean, it was good.
Yeah, the scene, that's what he means. Like
really
the scene.
Talented young guys.
Kamloops,
you know.
between Kamloops and Vernon and Kelowna, I never was able to check out anything in Penticton from that area. I never was down that
every
area.
show I went to, I've seen stuff that I just loved, you know, and, you know, previous to that, a lot of times it'd be just a lot of, you know, noise, you know, boom.
But he's talking about
banging.
the scene, like the general.
But
did
the
it
metal
decline?
scene is how
I thought it was. I thought it was starting to thrive
so
again.
talented
Yeah.
and technical young days, dude.
A lot
Get
of
the
young guys.
and whoa,
carrying the torch, man. I was so impressed by that. I was
Awesome.
supporting all these kids.
I want
They're
more.
as young as my kids, and I'm like, yeah, see, we win. It wasn't in vain. Now you can
we're
buy.
always told, oh, it's
you can buy a metal
fad,
shirt
you
at
can
Walmart
grow out
now.
of that. What are you wasting your time for? You look like a girl with all that long hair when I used to have long hair. You know?
No,
it's
I
still
think the
there.
scene over 2010 to
Metal's
2020.
never gonna die. I want.
I think it
stronger
started
here.
to pick up until COVID hit, and now we're all like, "Eh, now
There's
what?"
So many shows booked, all kinds of stuff.
Now it's going crazy, huh? I
finally
thought
going.
2010 to 2020 was probably, you know, well, that's when I got back into it, and there was a scene again, somewhat, for a local area. I thought it was starting to thrive again.
It was.
Great shows going on locally.
Yep.
Good shows.
But never the greatest venues.
Right. Well, you'll get to that, I'm sure.